The Switch 2 is probably releasing in, honestly, in my opinion, probably in like 6 months at the very least. And I'm pretty sure people are wondering if it's worth buying a Switch so close to the Switch 2 release date. And I think there's many reasons to buy one and many reasons not to buy one. So obviously the main question is, why buy a Switch 1 when the Switch 2 is releasing this year? And since the Switch 2 will have backwards compatibility, doesn't that render the Switch 1 completely useless? Well, if you're interested in the Nintendo Switch lineup of systems and their games, and have never really dabbled into it quite yet, then I'd say, sure, go for it. Go for the Switch 2 and wait however long that is. But if you don't want to wait that long and want a cheaper alternative, since the Switch 2 is probably going to be at least $400, then I say, why not just get a Switch Lite? It has all the features of a regular Switch, just no motion controls. And the Switch 2 is honestly kind of underrated. I'm pretty sure it's like $200. That's like half the price of potentially the Switch 2. But I honestly think the Switch Lite is honestly underrated just because of how cheap you could get it for. If you're not like, if you want to get into Nintendo but you're not sure, then getting a Switch Lite is a safe bet. And maybe once the Switch 2 comes out, you could upgrade halfway through the console lifespan or whatever. Or maybe when they introduce like a slim model like the Switch Lite. But honestly, the Switch Lite is a good investment because you could play that before the Switch 2 comes out. And once it does comes out, you already have games for it. And if you want to save your data, you could just transfer your save data. Probably. It's not confirmed if you could transfer from Switch to Switch 2. But I feel like they will have that. I'm not sure if you should get an OLED while we wait for the Switch 2. Because, well, while the Switch 2 is probably not going to have OLED, is $350 really worth it just to buy a $400 console like in a few months? And I'm not trying to discredit the Switch OLED because I actually love the OLED screen. But if you're not crazy about OLED screens, then I say just go for an original Switch or the Switch Lite. Because the Switch 2 is not going to have OLED anyways. If you're new to Nintendo, you could just get any Switch and catch up on the like library of games that released in the past like 7 or 8 years, and then buy the Switch 2 when you saved enough money. Half of PlayStation's monthly active users are PS4 users. Why? Because it still gets games to this day and it has a great library of games. The PS5 isn't going anywhere. Neither is the PS4. Same could be said for the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. If you're new to gaming or just Nintendo in general, I would say just buy a Switch and, you know, it's up to you whether you want to upgrade or not. The thing about Nintendo consoles is that they have the best exclusives. You're not going to be playing Mario on the PS4. So what I'm saying is, if you want to catch up on the Switch's lifespan, you could just get a Switch Lite. I'm very sure that Smash Bros. Won't launch on the Switch 2 year one. So obviously Smash Ultimate is going to have a lot of players still. That's just an example. But since the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, you could just play Smash Ultimate on the Switch 2. So really, if you want to buy a Switch or a Switch 2 or whatever it is, it really is just up to you. I feel like the Switch 2 is going to be the all-in-one Nintendo console, much like the Switch was, but it's probably not going to get half as many games as it gets like last year or whatever. Most games are just going to be dropping on the Switch 2. I just feel like buying one of the lower-end versions of the Switch 1 would be less of a waste of money with the Switch 2 coming around the corner. This video is mainly for people who haven't got into Nintendo yet but want to, or people that aren't really in the gaming scene at all. And I'm just discussing your options, if you want to, of course. I just think that even when the Switch 2 releases, the Switch 1 still has value. Like, the Switch 2 is not OLED, the Switch 2 doesn't have a D-pad. like the Switch Lite and doesn't have OLED like the Switch OLED. But the Switch 2 also doesn't have an IR camera, so you probably won't be able to play most Nintendo Labo games on there, if you even care about Nintendo Labo, because I sure as hell don't. But if you don't know, Nintendo Labo is basically the cardboard that Nintendo was selling that you could build for games. I would personally was never really into it, but if you're that type of guy that likes building stuff, or like have like a Lego hobby, for example, then I think you'd like the Nintendo Labo. Because honestly, why would they support that on the Nintendo Switch 2? I've recently been playing games like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with my brother whenever he's over, and it's such a blast. Like, the Switch is still a good console, and it still has good games, but those games are most likely all going to be supported on Switch 2, so why get a Switch 1 if you don't already have one? Well, with the Switch 2 releasing and the Nintendo Switch, you know, it's going to be dated. You know, it's a last gen console. So the Switch 1 is probably going to get significantly cheaper because now PS4s are like $100, $150, and that's Canadian. That's in Canadian dollars. So if you're cheap, not into gaming or not into Nintendo, then you could definitely get a Switch 1 before they drop the Switch 2. And who knows, you might not, well, I don't know. I don't even know if you're interested in the Switch 2. But if you are, you can just wait to get the Switch 2 instead of just getting a Switch 1, since the Switch 2 is going to support backwards compatibility with Switch 1 anyways. All in all, if you're not into gaming, not into Nintendo, and want a Nintendo system, then I recommend getting a Switch Lite. But if you're better off waiting, then just wait and get the Switch 2 because it's going to be backwards compatibility. That's just my opinion though, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys have a big Soprano day.